Okay. You don't get a message that the recording has started?
Yes,
Yeah.
Varun, I can see.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Varun, we have.
Yeah, yeah, Varun.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I think I did something else as well. Turn off infected things. Okay, let's try this. Okay, now there's no interpretation. Cool. Okay, so let's go back. Yeah, and then lastly, we talked about internal equity, which is similar to your segmentation, but slightly different. So, do you have a very homogeneous population and hence you would prioritize the internal equity? Or do you have a very diverse population and hence you'll have at the same level, you'll have different ranges and you'll have a fair amount of, perceived lack of equity at the same level or the same grade that you have. Maybe I'll just pause to see if there are any questions or comments because this is going to be the mother slide for all of our talks ahead. So, and since I think we have some new people joining in today, if there are any questions, we can address them now or any comments. I think for folks who come from the consulting world, if you've seen something different, please feel free to chime in. Okay, cool.
Varun, I just have since I did not attend the last session, I just have a
Mhm.
question. So when you made a point on the third market competitiveness, that generally the Indian companies are paying at the 50th P50 or maybe somewhere in
Hmm.
between 25 and P50. So
Mhm.
does that have a effect on the overall market in terms of is it only the mid-size companies or is there a trend between mid-size and
Uh,
large-sized, or how do they differentiate with their overall competitiveness when it comes to talent, right?
it's a good
Where
question.
I'm
So,
coming from is since I'm working with Okaya, it's a very small company, right? Hardly
hmm,
1,000 crore is the revenue, and we probably
hmm,
in the market are competing with Luminous, Excite,
hmm,
Amaron, which are large
mhm,
scale players. So when we look
mhm,
at attracting the right kind of talent, internally
hmm,
also there are a lot of heterogeneous roles, R&D roles. Now
hmm,
they're increasingly going to be very, very heterogeneous roles within marketing, within sales. Somebody's
hmm,
driving distribution, somebody's just driving the retail sales. So those roles are unique in themselves. So
mhm.
is it in the Indian parlance for the similar roles? Is it that's the P50? That's where I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, understood. Good question. I think very good point. Okay, so I think what we're now doing is is very theoretical, and I would say it's a loose guideline, right? Now, whatever rewards philosophy that you choose is not something which is cast in stone. For example, let's say you say that, for me as a Indian firm, let's take Biocon, right? So I would decide that I would be at P50 of my range, which is a combination of my internal range and my external market. Now, that doesn't mean that for every candidate, I will look at a P50 kind of a positioning, right? There would be a very varied kind of placement of employees in that range. That's one. Secondly, I think your point was if everyone is at P50, then how does the range, how does the range have that kind of a spread, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we talk
It
about
let's say
technical terms.
everybody is paying P50 for a certain role. Let's say 10 years of
Yeah,
experience, so and so profile,
yeah,
XYZ are matching. Those factors are
yeah,
matching in the requisition. Then how do we differentiate? What really differentiates in the market from a comp perspective?
yeah, exactly. So I think that's where the whole piece comes around. Let me just go off camera because there's a lot of bandwidth being used. Yeah. So I think uh, so that's where the difference between the philosophy or the stated thing versus the real payroll data. Because while everyone would have a certain philosophy, when you look at the recruitment data at the end of the year, or you when you do your annual revisions and you look at the overall population, you will see that there will be a lot of exceptions from your philosophy. That is one. Secondly, not every, so you're right. Most large Indian companies or conglomerates will look at a P50. Now, even those large conglomerates have now become flexible enough to a segmentation, which is basically saying my critical roles, my niche skills, my you know my talent pool, my succession kind of critical, my future focused roles. I will be more flexible. I'll be looking at a P75 or somewhere between a P66 and a P75. Whereas for my BAU roles, I'll be looking at a P50. And then for my roles which will soon become obsolete thanks to AI or thanks to anything else, I'm okay to look at a P25 to a P40. Yeah, so that's something that I've seen a lot of, at least when I was back in my consulting career, I saw a lot of companies do that. Secondly, you do have now you talked about the kind of the FMCG industry, right? The luminous and uh, electrical and the appliances, that kind of industry. So you can always have like a player of, let's say Amazon tomorrow decides to launch a UPS or whatever, right? So products similar to yours. They would not have a strategy of P50. They would say that I'll hire at a P90, or I will not have any philosophy. I'll just post people at whatever price they come in. So
Yeah,
a
so
lot of these. Hmm,
essentially, Varun, I mean,
go on.
that would also mean that they probably pick up the best, or that's what I'm trying to get to. Would they end up picking up the best talent in that niche, or how does it factor in terms of attracting? Because if they say they decide to go for a P75 or a 90, then what
Hmm.
what ends up happening as an outcome when a large scale player picks
Yeah,
up?
so correct. So when a large scale player comes and starts pumping in money and throwing money around, your whole range will expand. So I
Hmm.
remember, I think, since this is getting recorded, and I hope nobody shares this recording outside, but when Netflix came to India in 2015, I had kind of helped them set up the reward philosophy and do the initial 50 people hiring. So they didn't care about the market data,
The market.
or they didn't care about, right?
Hmm.
Essentially they poached whomever they could, and you suddenly in a year's time you saw the whole media job families range spread, or the market data spread expand from like a 80% to almost a 150%. It doubled,
Interesting.
and it got skewed heavily on the right hand side. So not
Yeah.
the min or the P25 didn't really move, but the P75 and the P90 crazily. So which is why we always suggest that when you have these kind of unique situations, you can't, be very rigid with your framework or with your philosophy, saying, I will continue to do what I believe in. You have to be very adaptable to the market. Same happened when Coinbase came to Hyderabad just before COVID. They also, with flush crypto funding and VC funding, they decided to kill the entire Indian crypto firms. And obviously now you see what happened to Coinbase. So it's a different story. So
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks, Varun.
so you need to be very agile with your philosophy.
Thank you, Varun. It
Okay. Yeah.
really clarifies. Yeah, yeah.
So anyone else with any comment question before we move on? Okay. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, I think this was the last slide that we covered last week, which was to say that when you craft anything for your organization, you have to look at these four perspectives. You look at what the organization wants, so the employer perspective. You look at what your employees want, so you look at your internal perspective. Most importantly, you look at your cost perspective, unless you're VC funded or you have unlimited if you have unlimited money, then you don't look at the cost. But and the last one is the external talent and the compliance regulatory landscape. Now, especially with the whole labor code, you see how important it has become and how your rewards philosophy needs to kind of adhere to the new direction of the Indian government. So this is where we had stopped. Before we go next, any last questions, comments? Okay, cool. Aditya, I hope you were able to join. I just saw the chat now.
Yeah, yeah, I am. I just
Oh,
downloaded.
okay, sure, sure. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think some of these slides now I'll go a bit quickly because these are fairly technical and maybe uh, not very. I mean, not maybe relevant to everyone. But if any of you all feel that we need to spend some more time on a particular slide, then just stop me. Right? So I think the first one is the connection between the rewards framework and the business. Now, typically, the first thing that you look at is the business life cycle. Right now, are you are you basically, as I think Reena kind of mentioned, uh, where are you at in your business life cycle? So, are you into value creation? Are you into let's say, an emerging market? Are you at a rapid growth phase, moderate growth phase, flat market, or are you in a declining market? Now, that has a direct role to play on your rewards philosophy, which we'll talk about in the later slides. Second is your business design, right? So who are your customers? Do you have a strategic control on your products? What kind of model? So are you at a value capture model where you're more looking at a talent arbitrage, you're looking at volumes, or are you at a profitability model where profitability is extremely important to you? The talent arbitrage or the cost arbitrage is something that is a second kind of a factor. What is the scope of your business? So what are you trying to do? What is your market share? Where do you want to go? Right? Are you into a homogeneous business or are you a diversified business? So all of that you need to understand to kind of have a very holistical reward philosophy. Third is the brand impact, right? So typically, you know, I think I keep jumping back to Prerna now because the example she gave was is a very apt one, right? So do you have a certain brand recall in the market, uh, positive or negative, or are you unknown, right? Basis that, for example, if you don't have a brand recall, you typically have to peg yourself higher in the market. You can't say that I will create a P50 and still expect people to join when I don't have a brand impact or a brand recall. Whereas, let's say if I'm a Netflix or if I'm the Tatas, maybe Tata is the wrong example now, but let's say I'm an Amazon, Google. I have such a deep or an Apple. I think Apple is a perfect example. I have such a deep rooted brand impact that tomorrow if Apple decides to pay at a P50, do you really think people will leave that? Maybe yes, maybe no. Right. So those are the kind of questions that you have to kind of look at when you craft your overall business. And lastly, the geographical impact. So, if you're a global company, you have a global philosophy. Do you tweak that for the Indian market, or do you say that I scrap my global philosophy that works in Europe, in North America, doesn't work in India? So I craft something very unique for India. Right? So these are the four main criteria that you kind of use from an employer perspective to craft your philosophy. Any comments, any remarks, questions? Okay. Yeah. So now, so 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 I think what I'll do is I'll share these slides because some of these slides are will now go into more detailing of each of the four buckets. Now, I guess since there are not too many questions, I might as well as skip these slides. Maybe I'll just pause for 30 seconds and see if anyone has a question. If no, then we can move on to the next. But essentially, what I talked about in the first slide, in the previous slide, is what is detailed out here. Are we good to proceed? Yeah, Manish, you had a question.
Yeah, Varun. So as in this slide, you have shown like there are different phases to market. So I just wanted to understand like whether these phases impact the kind of positioning that we want to have
Yeah,
uh, uh, in our company.
yeah. For example, okay, let's take real world example, right? Today, which is the market, which is the highest growing market, is AI, right? Everyone wants to get into
Hmm.
AI.
Yeah.
So AI is rapid growth, or
Hmm.
between an emerging market and a rapid growth kind of a
Hmm.
market. So here you can't say that I'll create a P50 or I will not have the world class benefits or I will have a very aggressive pay mix, right? So I think in such kind of markets you have to kind of go down to what the candidate wants. So let's say if the candidate or the overall market is paying a higher fix or maybe 100% fix, then you go with that, right?
Okay.
Similarly,
Okay.
yeah. So that's how your nature of market determines your pay philosophy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Varun,
Sure.
for clarifying.
Anyone else? I think when you'll ask question, just introduce yourself so that even I understand from where you'll come and I can tailor my response accordingly.
Hi, Varun. Reshma here.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, can you please explain about the third point here that uh, in key questions, what is the goal in declining markets, reinvent, harvest, divest? So,
Yeah, it's
what
very
kind of declining
interesting.
market?
Yeah, so okay, let's take an example. Maybe you all can also volunteer. What's the declining market today, right? Uh, what is the decline? Okay, let's take IT services now. Slightly controversial. How many of you all agree that IT services is a declining market? Or let's take BPO. I think BPO is a easy example. How many of you all feel BPO is a declining market? Yeah, I see some thumbs up. So let's go with BPO today. Now BPO is a very small margins kind of a business. So it's a very volume driven, uh, very small margins, very operational, very efficiency based kind of a model. Now, with AI, the whole industry is reshaping. Now, I'm not saying, but yeah, if you look at pure play revenues or for pure play profitability of these BPO firms, they have been declining. So what do they do? So a lot of BPOs, if you see today, they are reinventing themselves as analytics or KPO firms, right? I mean, they've been doing this for the past 5 years, if you ask me. The second is some of them will divest it. So you'll see a lot of conglomerates selling off their BPO arms to pure play analytics firms or even to GCCs. And the last one is harvest. So by harvest, what I mean is you basically pivot to grow into a different kind of. It's a bit like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, right? So you kind of start incubating the smaller businesses, different models, so that tomorrow in 3 years time you become a very different kind of industry or different kind of organization. Was that clear, Rishma, or
Yes, thank you.
any other questions? Okay, anyone else before we move on? Okay, let's move on. Okay, now, okay, so again, same bucket, employer perspective. This is on business design, right? So maybe I'll just pause for 30 seconds and you guys read it and let me know if there are any questions. I know it's a slightly heavy slide, which is why I'm in two minds whether to deep dive into it. I mean, typically this workshop will be like a 3 day workshop, right? So we're trying to kind of crunch it into 4 hours, which is not ideal. Okay. Any questions? Any remarks? Essentially, the slide talks about business design, right? So how is your organization designed to make money? If I have to kind of give you a non-AI summary. Okay, let's move on. I think this one is easy to understand. Brand impact. So, for example, is your brand an asset for you or is it a liability for you? Today, you look at the TCS brand. Interesting to know how many of you all see it still as an asset or is it now a liability? Uh, yeah. And then does the external talent associate the brand with these things, right? So is it an industry leading tactic? Is it known for building careers, social status? You know how the Indian market is. People get married or don't get married depending on which company they're part of. Employment risk, is the company known for its layoffs? Financial risk, uh, is the company very leveraged on debt and can become bankrupt? Desirable work environment, I think the whole work-life balance and the whole commentary around toxic work environment is fairly documented, right? So, for example, if you have a discount, right, your brand is not strong enough, then your competitive positioning needs to be at a higher side. You need to compensate for your discount. Whereas if your brand impact is at a premium, you can afford to be slightly more conservative on your composition because you know that the brand itself will draw a lot of. Okay. Any questions? Anything? We'll move on. Yeah. Okay. So this is from a very old survey, but I don't think things would have changed a lot even today. So what really matters to employees in India, and I think this is a good time to maybe have a bit more of interaction within us. So now we are, I think, 30 of us on the call. So why do people join? Why do people stay? Why do people leave? Let's kind of debate whether anything has changed in 2026 from 2020. You guys can unmute yourself and share your views. Just tell me your name and your company and maybe a bit about what you're doing, and then we can we can talk.
Hi Varun. Right now I do work for Accenture Strategy and Consulting, and
Hi.
on that, sorry, am I audible?
Yes, yes. You are.
Okay, so I have a question regarding this thing because I recently
Mm-hmm.
have run a survey in one
Mm-hmm.
large FMCG conglomerate, and similar kind of few things has emerged from their last 2 years attrition data, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I just previously I've worked in Deloitte Human Capital Consulting for a couple of years for FS
Mm-hmm.
industries basically.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm not working on totally remuneration, total rewards or LTI perspective or exit com, but
Mm-hmm.
nowadays I work on some surveys, tie up with Q12 or Gallup, and
Right.
some interesting insights have come up which can resonate with this slide, like
Mm-hmm.
nature of work in 0 to 1 years candidate, tenure candidate has
Mm-hmm.
emerged up one of the biggest reason of leaving. Okay,
Yeah.
second would be following by promotion and career progression. So yeah, I
Mm.
can look some of the reasons in some shape or form here. So yes, I
I
can
think the
resonate
the
with this slide.
order has changed a bit, and I think it also depends on, as you rightly said, it's very personalized to each person. Like for example, if I talk about myself, why will I leave? Uh, I think, for example, flexibility in location, okay, maybe not that, but Yeah, fun work environment it will not be number 10. Fun work environment for me will be like a number 4 or a number 5. Similarly, pension retirement options will not be that high to me. It will be much lower. For me, the biggest one will obviously be development opportunities, competitive pay, meaningful work, fun work environment, and maybe health benefits for my family because I have two parents. I mean, my parents are in their 70s now, so very difficult for me to get insurance in the market. So I think those will be the top 5 for me. So that's I think that's the conundrum that we all have as PR professionals. It is so personalized, right? That what matters. So how do you like Shubhro said, you need to do a what is it called? You need to do statistical analysis to see how to get the most bang for your buck. So you'll have to create those employee personas, cohorts, understand what works for the majority, how do you cater for the minority. That itself, the consulting folks on the call will tell you is a good 6 months, 9 months kind of a project. If you have to do a proper deep dive into what really matters and how do you optimize your total rewards framework for your organization. Okay. Anyone else wants to share something before we move on? Which is why my manager is interested under leave. Uh, okay, yeah, that is also an interesting point. I think I think that is covered most probably under meaningful work because typically if you have a toxic manager, irrespective of whether you like the work or not, it's very difficult to kind of be engaged in that work. So maybe it's merged or combined with meaningful work and development opportunities because if you have a toxic manager, you will surely not have any development opportunity. But for joining, if you see, interestingly, my manager is there. So people, when they join the company, they definitely join basis what they perceive of their hiring manager. Similarly, for staying, also my manager is there in the top 10. But for leaving, again, this is a employee survey, so people would have been a bit hesitant of saying that they leave because of the manager. Or probably the usual thing the manager would say, HR has taken this call, so the manager does not become the villain, right? It's the HR which is the villain. The people leave because of HR and not because of the manager. Okay, good. Let's move on. Okay, external perspective again, self-explanatory. Who is my comparative market? Where do I hire talent from? Where do I lose people to? What skill sets or capabilities are required? Where will you find them? Who are the competitor organizations? What is their pay philosophy? So you'll see a lot of, I mean, on a lighter vein, you'll see a lot of summer interns being asked to benchmark this, right? Go and find out what is the pay policy in our peer firms. And unfortunately, with AI, everyone uses AI to kind of create those slides. So I mean, this is the kind of study that you will have to do if you want to have a very well-rounded rewards strategy or thing. Okay, cost perspective.
I'm
uh,
sorry, Varun. Can you please go
yeah,
back to that slide once again?
so
Thank you.
don't worry about making notes here. I'll be sharing the recording, and these slides are part of the recording. So it's okay. You get these pointers on the call.
This is good. This is good. Thank you. We can go ahead.
So, okay, cost perspective again. What kind of a growth stage are you? Are your sales shrinking or are your sales consistently higher than competitors? Profitability, are you consistently unprofitable? Are you consistently more profitable? staff cost. Let me give you a typical Biocon perspective, right? So it's a very interesting problem that we have. So for us, our sales growth has been consistently above competitors, right? So from a sales perspective, we are I think we are number three in the overall global biosimilars industry. Profitability, we are consistently below the industry. So we have one of the worst PAT in the whole uh, biosimilars or with the whole health sciences kind of an industry. And to kind of compound the problem, our staff cost is the highest. And, thank me for that. But unfortunately, our staff cost is the problem that I've inherited from the past. That my cost is the highest in the industry. So it's like a double whammy where my investors are asking me for a higher profitability, but unfortunately, my staff cost is pulling down my overall profitability. So that's the kind of, so how will that shape my rewards philosophy? So it becomes very cost centric now, right? So any program, anything that I do, I need to be very cognizant of the fact that I shouldn't be increasing my overall payroll cost or my overall people operations cost. So that's how your cost perspective will also impact your rewards philosophy. Okay, it's 10:45. Maybe we'll cover a couple of more slides and then take a break. Okay. Okay. Now this is a new topic. So do you guys want to start this today or should we do it next week? Any views around this?
How long will this topic take, Varun?
So okay, I think let's take this one slide and then kind of wrap it up for the day, right? And then we take the day. So okay, so now let's look at internal equity, right? Now, internal equity has two elements. One is internal equity itself, in terms of, how do you differentiate pay within your job families, right? So, are you saying that all of my job families have similar impact to my organizations, or just to give you a very layman example, is finance equally important as HR, or do I prioritize finance over HR? Right. This is also where job evaluations kind of come in. And second is the segmentation. So, do I have different strategy for different workforce? I think last week we discussed Amazon as a good example where it has a tech business, it has a whole server cloud business, and then it has a media, entertainment, very futuristic businesses like your driverless cars and all that. So every segmentation will have a different view and will have a different approach. You can't have like a one size fits all kind of an approach. Second is around market competitiveness. So again, what is the market definition? Do I look at my immediate business peers? For example, we at Biocon, we look at our immediate business peers for all of our front-ending functions, and then for all of our enabling functions like HR, finance, IT, marketing, we look at our talent competitors, which is basically general industry because we hire from everywhere. So that's how we define the market at Biocon. Market positioning. So I think we spoke about this a while back. So do I have a one size fits all saying for all my roles I'll peg myself at a P50? Or do I say, okay, for let's say the office of AI, I look at a P90 or a P75, but for something like admin, I'm okay looking at a P25 or a P40. And then lastly, your comp structure. Uh, so every element of your structure says something to your employees and to your external talent, right? For example, let's look at fixed pay, right? If I'm if I typically pay above the market, that tells people that you're valuing them. You basically value their talent. You trust their abilities, and hence you're paying a higher fixed amount from your end. Whereas generally, if you have a lower fixed and a higher variable, that means that I want to see how you work. I'm going to pay you more depending on your performance at the end of the year. And at the same time, I want to run a very tight cost model kind of thing. Uh, Compensation mix and differentiation. So again, do I have a similar VPay percentage across my organization, or do I say for enabling I'll have a more conservative pay mix, but for my front ending functions I will have a more uh, more aggressive pay. So these are the six elements that will define your rewards philosophy or your reward strategy. Right? So whenever you document your rewards philosophy, you need to have answers to each of these six boxes. And maybe if you guys are interested, we can like pick up one of your organizations and like together we can arrive at a comp philosophy or a rewards philosophy for that organization. So I think this kind of brings an end to the introduction part. I think next week we'll deep dive into what is the objective of total rewards, right? So there's a exercise there. And then we talk about the 3P model. So we kind of start doing a deep dive into the comp part of the total reward. So I think which is good. So today we've almost kind of summarized the rewards philosophy part of the. Okay, I think we have 10-15 minutes left. Happy to take your feedback or if there are any questions we can discuss that as well. Let's look in the chat window to see. Let's see. Hi,
Uh,
hi.
Thank you for the session. It was really helpful in understanding what are the various levers we can use or think about when thinking of a reward philosophy. Uh,
Hmm.
as you suggested, it will be helpful if we can make, if not, of course, documented, but at least make in terms of pointers and all the levers that you mentioned across that.
Hmm.
If we could determine uh, what would be preferable for at least, say, two very different organizations in different scale,
Hmm.
industry, etc., so that it will be exercise for us to apply it in real life. I think that would be really helpful. And how do we
So
decide that? Like, what are the
let's do
sources
one
we can?
thing. Great point, Nirali, right? Great point.
Yeah.
So let's do one thing. Let's take up two organizations, and as homework, we kind of do our notes around these two organizations, and maybe at the start of the next session, two or three of you all can kind of present your thoughts. Okay. So, and you guys can also kind of volunteer which two organizations you want to cover. But I'm just thinking to start off, let's take Zepto as one example. Okay. And the second one could be, uh, second one could be, uh, let's take TCS, Tata Consulting Services. So we have one very large organization and we have one which is in a very high growth pre-IPO kind of a example. And you sorry, I think I can't catch your name, but yeah, please go ahead. You have a question? R.
But I don't have a question, but I just want to add one more point while we
Mhm.
discuss the topics in the future. There's one point which I would like to understand in detail, especially related to ranges. Like, let's say if an organization would want to move from broad ranges to narrow to broad ranges, how would this happen in real time, and what all considerations should we be taking? That is one topic which I'll be interested in.
Sure, sure. So we'll go there. So right now we are still very high level. We talk about rewards philosophy, reward strategy. What you're kind of hinting at is more tactical, more operational in terms of how do you design, how do we kind of create those ranges, or how do we cater those ranges as per the scenario. So we'll get there. I mean, I think when Shubro had that question, what are we going to cover next, right? So, and if you guys believe in this, this is going to be a year-long kind of a thing. So as we go ahead and ahead, we get more granular, more, more kind of detailed. Right now, it's more since all of us don't come from a CNB background, it's more high level, more easy to understand kind of topic. So Shubro, initially in my plan, next session was going to be around job evaluation. I'm open to see with you all if you all want to start job evaluation, or do you want to continue on this rewards philosophy kind of a topic. Otherwise, the original plan was next session would be job evaluation, and then the last weekend, which is a long weekend, I think. So that you all need to let me know if you all are going to be available for the last weekend of May, or do you all want to push it to, let's say, a weekday evening kind of a session? Uh, I don't know if everyone, I mean, some of, like, I would be in Mumbai, so I'm traveling, but if you guys are available on that 31st weekend, you can do it. Else, we can also prepone it to a Friday evening or a Thursday evening. Okay, I think Prerna, yeah. So okay, cool. We can carry on with we can start job evaluation next session, and before that we can just if anyone has some notes around the rewards philosophy for Zepto and TCS, you all can share that, right? And yeah,
Varun, a quick check. Aditya here from Soroko.
yeah, yeah.
See, is it okay if we can do like salary benchmarking or increment benchmarking? We start off with that, or do you have to go it in a structured way? This can't come in between or come before certain topics that we cover.
So I think what I can do in the group is I can put a poll saying what do you all want to cover next week, right? Or maybe even some of you all can say that this is the overall laundry list and start voting for what you all as a majority want next week, right? I think all of you all have that TRVP access, right? So maybe you all can, and there are 28 chapters in TRVP. So just look at, and there's a sequence in TRVP in terms of typically you want to do chapter one, chapter two, like that. We ideally shouldn't jump to chapter 20 at the start. So we can follow that schedule as well. We can go chapter wise as per the TRVP.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comment before we wrap up for today? Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend
Varun.
ahead.
Thank you, Varun.
Thanks, Varun. Have a great week.
Thanks, Varun.
So, Nika,
Thank you.
I'll send you the TRVP link. I'll send the TRVP link on the entire group. Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.